friends, welcome back to Homeschool-ology. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Nikki. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4. I've got an 8th grader, 4th grader, kindergartner, and pre-Ker. We are in our 9th year of homeschooling, and that's just crazy to me to think that it's almost been a decade. But we do secular homeschooling around here, and that's kind of what I like to share with you guys. And I also like to share with you like motherhood and just our life in general and things like that. And so on the today's video is going to be 8 mistakes I've made during our homeschool journey. And by sharing this, I'm hoping to, have a little bit of accountability with you guys for myself, selfishly, but also share some of these things that I've struggled with and try to provide you with as many tips as I can about what I've done to combat these so that you guys don't have to make the same mistakes yourself. So let's dive into these. So I have ranked this list from 8 to 1, and I would say, I'm going to preface this and say that they're not always in this order. This just happens to be the order that I chose today, but I will tell you that my number 1 is always my number 1. So when we get there, I have talked about this a little bit before, so I'm sure you guys won't be super surprised if you're a subscriber and back to chat with me again today. But let's dive in by starting at number 8. And that is buying too many things. And so this is definitely a problem that I have, and I'm working on it. And this year is probably going to be a little bit boring for you guys on my planning side of it because I'm probably not going to be buying a whole lot of new things this year. But I'm a curriculum junkie. I've loved it. I was a public school teacher, so obviously I love planning and doing all of those things like that. But I do have several curriculum pieces that I've purchased and opened and never used, or not even opened, or like a PDF that I never even looked at again. And I'm really trying to work on not letting that happen because I would rather be using those resources for something that we are going to use or something that we do actually need. And so you don't need all the things, all the curriculum to homeschool. I do think there are things that are helpful to have, and obviously curriculum is something that, a tool that is going to be helpful for a lot of people, but you don't have to have it all. We are not those kind of homeschoolers here in our household. We don't want our homeschool lessons to take most of the day. We want to be kind of done with our school in, a short amount of time, and so we just don't have time for all of the things that I have bought and wanted to try. So that is something that I'm still working on, but getting a little bit better at, as far as like understanding that like we need to focus on the things that we know that we are actually going to get to, and maybe not pick up all those other things that would be add-ons or things that we don't necessarily need. So that also factors into number 7, which is planning too much. So I do have these flows that I do with my kiddos that, we have. These are the things that we were going to do on certain days. And I can tell you right now, looking at this, there are at least 3 things on there that we aren't doing. And it's just simply because I over-planned too much. My expectations were too high for what we were going to accomplish. And I do it every year, guys. I do it every year. So this year, I'm going to really focus on trying not to put so much on the calendar. I know that English language arts and math are the 2 things that we absolutely always do, even when we don't want to we do those things. And then we really like history and science around here, so we really like to add those things in. And then all the rest of it is extra, and I just need to remember that it's extra and not put so much on us all at one time. I've experimented with like loop schedules before, which if you don't know what that is, it's like you focus on, so say you do an art unit that takes 6 weeks, and then after that you do a writing unit that takes 6 weeks, and then after that you do a let's see, what else is there, science unit, and then you do for 6 weeks. And so I've experimented with that in the past. It wasn't super successful because it was kind of like the things that we weren't ever going to really get to anyways. And so I'm going to try it with things that I'm going to try it again and see if I can make it a little bit more successful this time. But just remembering that we don't have to do it all at one time. We can rotate these things. We can, they don't have to do everything all of the time. So number 6 kind of plays off of this. It's thinking that we're not doing enough. So I always plan out all these things, and then when I don't get them to mark them off of our checklist, I feel like we're not getting everything done, or we're not accomplishing enough. And we are accomplishing a ton. My kids are doing great. They are, oftentimes ahead of their public school peers in a lot of areas, or, at least matched up to them. And so I also have a lot of trouble with things like we loved using Build Your Library, but we didn't check all the boxes. Like, we didn't do all the things. And I always felt like that meant we were behind and not getting enough. It's also why I don't feel like, or why I don't pre-plan, why I write things, why I'm a post planner and write things in my planner after we've done them, not before we've done them. Because if I couldn't cross those things off, I felt like we weren't doing enough. And we are doing enough. We do a ton. My kids are learning all of the time, and we don't have to, aren't only learning when they're sitting at the table learning with me. They're learning when they're going to the store with me, and they're learning when we're just having a discussion in the backyard about this cool bug we're looking at. They're learning all of the time. So I'm remembering that you don't have to do it all, and you're not behind if you don't do it all, is something that I have worked on, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at. So hopefully you can too. Just remember, you don't have to do it all. And if doing things like post planning will help you with that, so that you don't have to make sure you're checking all the boxes or having to move things around, that might help you the way that it helped me, which was number 5 also. So not thinking I'm doing enough and feeling behind, I guess, kind of go hand in hand. They're kind of very similar. Like, even though I'm putting all these things on my schedule, I feel like it's not enough, and then also feeling behind because we didn't get to all these things that I put on my schedule. That was kind of 5 and 6 together there when I was talking that out. So let's move on to number 4, which is not setting expectations with my kiddos. So I did a poor job of setting like homeschool rules with my kiddos, like rules about how we're going to handle ourselves in the homeschool classroom, for lack of a better word, or during our homeschool time. I didn't do a great job of setting up what I expected of them. And I have a whole video in this, I'll link it here, and where I did create rules and we did set expectations, and things are going a little bit better because of it. We're still working on repairing our bad habits. But that is something that I think if you're starting to homeschool, that you should really do from the beginning. Make actual homeschool rules, just like classroom rules that they would have in the classroom in a public school setting. Have those same rules for your homeschool time. Because you don't have to have a room to homeschool. You just have homeschool time. But what are the expectations? What do you expect your kiddos to be doing during that time? Do you expect them to have a positive attitude? Do you expect them to do the work without complaints? Do you expect them to do, what is it that you expect of them? And actually lay those out with your child. That is something that I missed, that I didn't do a good job of with my older 2, that I'm really working on with my younger 2. They have expectations, they know what's expected of them, and they must behave in a proper way when it is homeschool time. So I have often said, like, the line between parent and homeschool mom, it's a scale, not a role, not this role and that role. It's both roles at the same time. And sometimes I'm closer to this side and sometimes I'm closer to that side, but I'm always both. So making sure you're putting those expectations on your kiddos, just like you would as, in a parent role, is something that's really important from the start. Okay, number 3, which I used to think was my biggest mistake, and it's still pretty high up there for me, and it's pushing too hard. So I've told this story a few times before, but if you don't know, when I was homeschooling my oldest, we were using All About Reading, and it just wasn't clicking. And we were ending every lesson with my daughter, both of us, in tears. Not just her, both of us. We were both crying and frustrated and overwhelmed by all of it. And it was because I was pushing too hard. I was trying to keep up with what the curriculum expected us to be doing, and expecting her to be doing things that she wasn't quite ready to do yet. And I was just pushing too hard. I was not giving her enough grace, and not letting her be, where she was at the time. And so it got to a point where we were ending every single day crying. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. We're done with this. We're not doing this anymore. And I put that aside, and I didn't even pick up any other reading curriculum at the time. I just said, we're done. We need a break. We aren't doing this anymore. And maybe 2 months went by and she was reading with me doing nothing. She ended up wanting to be able to read things. She got tired of bringing me her game console every time she was playing a game. She didn't want, for me to read it to her, and she learned how to read. And when she was ready to read, she learned how to read. And so I didn't need to push her so hard. I didn't need to push my 5-year-old, new 5-year-old. She has an August birthday, so she's very young for her grade level. I just didn't have to push her that hard. And I wish I would have learned, I'm glad that I learned that lesson that early, because I didn't do that with my second daughter. And yeah, it took her a lot longer to learn how to read, but now she reads just fine, guys. You can't tell the difference between the two of them now. And so the kids will get there on their own time when they're ready. They don't have to keep up with their public school counterparts. So that is something that I have really taken to heart, and really I learned it the hard way. But I'm glad that I learned that you don't have to push so hard. Go at your own pace. Learn. I really feel like the best way, the most that kids are going to learn is when they're excited or interested to learn about something. And so really listen to them. What do they want to learn about? What do they want to learn how to do? And if they want something hard enough, they will eventually learn how to do it. So I think that we ourselves as adults do that, right? Like if we don't care about something, we're not going to learn about it. But if we care about it, we're going to learn a whole bunch about it. And we just need to remember that they're humans too. I always say, they're just tiny humans, and they do things the same way we do. And we just need to remember that, give them the grace to come to things on their own time frame. So not pushing hard was a big lesson that I learned in the beginning. And hopefully this will help you guys not make that same mistake. Okay, number 2 is not having enough fun. So this kind of plays back into all of the things that I talked about, all my 5, 6, 7, 8, is that I put too much on our calendar, and I'm trying to get too much done, and I'm forgetting to, we're doing so much of the other things that aren't necessarily as fun, that I'm forgetting that homeschool is also supposed to be fun. And so that is something that I'm definitely going to be working on when I'm planning out my new year in this next year, is remembering to put those fun things back into homeschool. And maybe that looks like only doing bookwork 3 days a week and spending that, our Fridays doing something fun like game schooling or going on a field trip, or just spending time together. And maybe that looks like something else. Maybe that looks like I'm making sure that I include some kind of experiment every week or something like that. I don't know what that looks like yet. I'm still experimenting with that. But that's definitely something that has been missing from our homeschool. And by not doing as many fun things, I feel like my children have become a little bit resistant to doing homeschool at all, because we're only doing the boring things and not the exciting things. So that is definitely a mistake I've made in the past that I'm going to be working on. And then my number 1 is not being consistent enough. And so that is just something that in my life I struggle with. Just as a general rule, I'm really bad about being consistent with things. And I'll do really good at something for a little while, and then I just kind of lose the momentum or lose the excitement of it, and I just stop. And I've done that in our homeschool. I'm not being consistent about when we're starting and stopping. I'm not being consistent about how often we're doing school. I'm not being consistent about really much of anything in our homeschool. And it's definitely something that we've been struggling with, because when I'm not consistent, then they're not consistent. And they, children really want consistency in their lives. And so that is definitely something that I don't have a lot of tips for you right now, because it's what I'm struggling with currently the most in our homeschool. And so, if you've got those things that you can share with me down below, things that helped you stay a little bit more consistent, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. I'm sure it will help others as much as it helps me. And also, while you're down there, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. But consistency is important, and it's something that we have definitely fallen off on in the past year to 2 years, and something that I definitely need to put back in, because I think it would help us a lot. But yeah, so that wraps up my list. Just to recap them, number 1 is consistency. Number 2 is forgetting to have fun. Number 3 is pushing my kids too hard. Number 4 is not setting expectations for my kiddos. Number 5 was feeling behind. Number 6 was thinking I'm not doing enough. Number 7 was planning too much, and number 8 was buying too much. So those are the mistakes that I think are the biggest mistakes that I've made along our 9-year homeschool journey. What are some of the mistakes you feel that you might have made? Are they similar to mine or different than mine? I'd love to chat about that more down in the comments, and especially people who are new to homeschooling. I think, by us talking about these things that we're not exactly the most happy with, will help them to not necessarily, maybe they don't make the same mistakes that we made, or maybe that helps them be a little bit more successful, or they can, at least know what to look out for, which sometimes can be a really big help. So I think that's what I'm going to share with you guys for today. Don't forget, you can always check us out over on Instagram at Homeschool-ology. And I think that's going to be it for me. So I hope you'll come back and chat with me again real soon, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.